Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Welcome back in. Sorry, a little bit of a little glitch there getting going. Well, welcome back in another episode of Born on the Bayou Sports. Tim Costello, Scott Barzilla coming to you hot here on a Wednesday night as the trade deadline has passed. The Olympics are in full swing. There is a lot that has happened here in the past week, both athletically and just in the world, Scott.
Yeah, and I have a feeling this is going to be an extra salty episode of Born on the Bayou Sports. But before I get there, I just had a quick question because, my daughter caught me with a bottle of whiskey that was sitting out on the counter. And so she asked me if I was day drinking. So here's my question. Have you ever had a beer or a drink after you got home from work?
Absolutely.
Is the sun still shining?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be day drinking?
Yeah. I've also had a beer at 11 a.m. I've had a beer. I've legitimately done some day drinking before, Scott. I don't care how people spend their time off. Like, as long as you're not driving, I don't care what time of day it is,
So I guess we need to change that expression maybe to work drinking. Maybe that's bad.
I mean, I'll say, like, if you're drinking while you're working, I don't necessarily mind as long as, like, number one, I'm not working with you. And number two, if you can get your job done, whatever. Like, I don't really care.
If you're in customer service, that might not be a great idea.
Really depends on the job, right? Like, do you want your, Houston Metro driver popping a couple? No, absolutely not. Do you want the AT&T customer service rep maybe a little loosed up? Probably a little easier to deal with people.
Well, I was thinking, like, if you're, have you seen the Vitamina Vegemin episode of I Love Lucy?
Absolutely. I actually own every episode of I Love Lucy.
So if you were managing at Grimaldi's and one of your waitresses was Lucille Ball on the I Vitamin Vegemin episode, I'm guessing that wouldn't be a good thing.
No. And that has absolutely happened to every restaurant manager who's ever worked in the restaurant industry. Someone has shown up to work drunk, high, or both. Like, that's just the world we live in. And depending on who they are and how many times they've done it before, you either send them packing for good or send them packing that night for sure.
Well, in this episode, we'll be getting to people who may have been high. It may have been alcohol. It may have been other substances. It may even be cupcakes, which I will get to later on in the episode. But it will tie in, I promise.
There was certainly some questionable decision making throughout the week. Yeah, it was a weird week for Houston. It was a weird week, like, around the world. I feel like. I mean, I love the Olympics, Scott. Absolutely love it. But I'm also one of those people who, like, I don't think I've ever watched a minute of volleyball, at least before I met my wife, outside of Olympic time period. but you put some beach volleyball on, you put the men's volleyball team on. I literally was looking up the fucking jerseys because it was a Mizuno brand. You know, I'm a Mizuno guy rocking a Mizuno hat right now. I'm like, fuck it. I'm about to buy a Mizuno volleyball jersey. Team USA, let's go, baby. Like, it's just a weird time.
Yeah, there's only one production thing that I have qualms with them about, which we'll get to more of the production stuff at the Olympics later, I'm sure. But like there was a French gymnast who she fell twice during, I think, a floor routine. And then she came back and did another apparatus and it went horribly. And so she is sitting there bawling her eyes out because, she's worked hard for 4 years to get to this moment. And I hate to use the word choke in athletics, but, she's had a rough day.
Yeah.
And they just keep showing the camera on her and how much she's crying. And it's like, come on, people, let's lay off. Let her have a private moment.
The emotion, right? They want to show that emotion, but on the other side of it too, right? You've got, I'm gonna have some hat tips come from our Olympics, but one that probably could get a hat tip, but there's so much like that Team USA men's gymnast team, Scott. I didn't watch it live, but I did. I've watched that dude Steve. I can't remember his last name. The guy with the glasses. His pommel horse routine was like, I first of all, I don't know what I'm watching, right? Like I have no idea how the pommel horse is scored, but all I know is I said, holy shit, like 6 times during his routine. Like the one hand spins and then like working. I mean, I couldn't do that underwater in the pool, man. Like it's just to see what some of these guys are capable of doing, to see the human body pushed to those levels, to see like just a pure display of athleticism. It's been an unbelievable first week of the Olympics.
Yeah, I was captivated actually by the women more than the men. And I mean, everybody's focusing on Simone Biles and how she, had, an obvious injury to her lower leg. But there was a gymnast from another country. It wasn't France. I can't remember which country it was. She was obviously not going to win a medal. She had her leg taped up to every inch of her life. And she did the uneven bars to the point where she couldn't dismount. She had to have somebody just basically carry her down and set her on the ground. But she still did the rest of her routine because, this was her one chance to be in the Olympics.
Did you see the story of the, I think she's 68 years old, maybe 58, I'm not sure, but she's table tennis and she's representing Chile, but she's actually from like Chinese Taipei and originally, and she was like one of the top players in the world. And in the 80s, they switched from both sides of the paddle being one color to then now you've got your traditional 2-colored paddle, right? Well, somehow the 2-color paddle messed up this lady's like brain in ping pong, and she just mentally like couldn't compete at the same level anymore. So she hangs it up. She becomes like a ping pong instructor for kids. And then somehow during COVID, she just started playing ping pong again for exercise. And next thing you know, she's back at the Olympics representing Chile at, I believe it's 68 years old.
Yeah, there was, I think one of the gymnasts from Haiti. She's actually from the United States. She's a coach at Penn State, a gymnast coach. Obviously was not good enough to make the American team. So she's like, hey, I'll go try out for Haiti. And she's competing in the Olympics and as a coach.
So let me ask this, Scott. What one sport, if I gave you 4 years to do nothing but train, would Scott Barzilla have the best legitimate chance to try and qualify for the Olympics?
In my youth or now?
Either or. Because if you're going to say in your youth golf, I'm still going to disagree with you.
No. In my prime, I was actually a pretty damn good distance runner.
Okay.
I finished the marathon in 2006, but but when I was in junior high and some high school, I ran cross country. So if you gave me 4 years, I could probably qualify for maybe at that point, maybe the Olympic marathon.
Fair. That's fair. I'd like to think in my heart of hearts, if you gave me 4 years to do nothing but play ping pong, I could get there. I was a really really good ping pong player at one point in my life. I won the Holiday Beach Resorts Week 23 yearly tournament for about 15 years in a row. Ran the Destin game room, and then in high school I was in the ping pong club as well. So had a table growing up. I'd like to think if like you paid me a salary and my job was to get damn good at ping pong, I could give you a run.
You doing the Forrest Gump thing, or you practicing against a wall and all that? Yeah,
Absolutely. I used to do that.
yeah.
Like I had my own table. So you just put like
I
sometimes you just want to practice. You put it up and you play.
Hand-eye coordination was never my big thing. That was the one thing that killed me in baseball is I couldn't hit. Um, just after a certain level, but
So let me flip this
yeah,
question around, Scott. While we're still on the topic, there's now just such a litany of Olympic sports. Um, is there any of them that you would almost be like embarrassed to like tell the family that this is what you're doing in the Olympics, right? Like if you were the Olympic break dancer or whatever it is, right? Is there any event that you like would qualify for that you kind of like low key do it and not tell anyone?
horse dancing.
Okay, that's
I
fair.
I don't know what they call that, but have you seen the event?
Dressage. It's called dressage.
Dressage. Yeah, I'm not. No.
Only because I watch Parks and Rec, and there's like they make a whole thing out of like it's called dressage, sir.
Well, I saw the John Oliver on it where he was, had this horse dancing to Smooth, and it's like somehow you're embarrassing a horse and Carlos Santana all at the same time.
I I feel like badminton might be that one for me. Like I don't care how tough you are. Like the moment you start swinging that little racket and trying to hit the birdie, like you don't look tough. Like you really don't. So like I'd have to like it's just every badminton game I've ever seen just looks ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Badminton is definitely up there.
Speaking of ridiculous, Scott, I think that's right now about the only way you can describe your Houston Astros. They come off a pivotal series with the Dodgers, right? Where the White Sox are playing. I'm sorry, the White Sox are playing the Mariners. Cakewalk for the Mariners. You've only got a 1 game lead. The Astros take care of business, look great doing it, and then the Pittsburgh Pirates come to town and the fucking wheels fall off. It is such a maddening season, a season where injuries have been the head storyline, but in between some of those subheaders or subtitles have been a lot more, about the quality of play of this roster. So trade deadline comes and goes. We'll get into the moves that were made, but this week, as a Houston Astros fan, past the Dodgers series, has really been a frustrating one.
Yeah, and I'm going to get into the Astros as an organization. I think we both are. But I think the biggest disappointment for me this season has been Joe Espada. I was really looking forward to watching him manage. I was really looking forward to not watching Dusty Baker manage. And when he came out, in the opening press conference, said, we're going to put the best 9 guys on the field. I'm like, hell yeah, let's go. And then I look at the lineups that are getting put out there, and I'm like, this isn't the best 9 guys. What are we doing?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say a little more there, but no, you're
No.
right. You're right. Well, you and I constantly had the argument of why is Joey Laprofito not in the lineup? Why early on in the season where was Chaz? Um, you know Singleton not playing over Abreu. It seems like there were certainly a lot of gripes, right? And most of them I feel like legitimate gripes between Astros fans who know what the fuck they're talking about, right? I think there were very few Astros fans who were not happy when Espada got the gig. I was you like if you want to go look at the receipts, you and I both were Team Espada from the get go. This was the guy that we wanted. You and I came on this show, and we're happy about the hire. So at some point, is this first year having control? Is this he isn't who we thought he was? Is this the guys haven't performed? Is it a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't want to step too much on future segments of this particular episode, but I think there is a whole lot going on here that needs to be talked about. And I'll just leave it at that.
No, you're definitely right on that edge, right? Where no one knows who's in charge of this team. Um, I don't even know if the people who are technically in charge of the organization know who is in charge right now. And you're right. We'll get into that a little bit later, but it it often felt like when Dusty was in charge, Dusty had autonomy, right? Like Dusty had the owner's ear, and Dusty was going to do whatever the fuck Dusty wanted to do, right? Like to the point where we had a trade in place to bring in Wilson Contreras, and Dusty goes to Jim Crane to nix the trade, right? So we now have, I feel like maybe the opposite situation where we've got GM and manager maybe a lot more in sync, and we've got maybe a little less autonomy. He's a young manager. He first year through, maybe there's a little bit more control coming from the top in this scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to MLB radio throughout the last few days, particularly on Tuesday and Monday, the deadline day and the day before, and they interviewed Seattle's general manager. Who? Here's a funny thing: who is Seattle's general manager?
Is it Jerry DiPoto?
It is not. Jerry Poto has apparently been bumped upstairs.
Okay.
So it's some other guy. I can't even remember his name. But they got to the point where they talked about Justin Turner, Randy Arozarena. They talked about, Julio Rodriguez coming back soon and J.P. Crawford maybe coming back. And they asked the GM, hey, what would you like to see the lineup? And the GM purposely said, that's not my job. That's the manager's job. Do you think that's going on in Houston?
No, I don't. I really don't. I feel like maybe not where they hit in the order. Like maybe he does give a spot of that, but I think he'll like for the longest time you had people saying like Abreu needs to be in the lineup, or we need to use Montero. We make sure we're using certain guys in high leverage situations, right? I do think there's a little bit more. Maybe you'll call it the analytics department, but I don't think that's where it's coming from. I think the triumvirate that is Reggie Jackson, Jeff Bagwell, and I guess Dana Brown really probably have a lot more pull in that clubhouse than there have been in years past.
Yeah, and I definitely think we're getting on future territory here. So I don't know if you wanted to open up that scab for Monday and Tuesday night action here.
Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit because Dubon finally puts a good swing on one. Astros on top 5-4, Scott.
I saw that, which is kind of going to dampen a little bit of it.
Yeah, I said finally because I know you're not happy with Dubon right now. But no, let's talk about the first two nights of this series because that's where I really want to start this conversation because I felt about as high as I could or as high as I have literally at any point this season about this club coming out of the Dodgers series, right? Like everything about the Dodgers is, this is a class team from the other division, potential World Series matchup. And we fucking handle our business against the Dodgers. And we look good doing it. And all of a sudden, literally the Pirates come to town, and I understand health situations. We caught the Dodgers at a time where maybe they weren't as healthy. Freddie Freeman had some stuff going on with his family, and I as a parent, I want nothing but the best for Freddie and his child. But the Pirates are hungry. They're in a playoff chase. They made moves to make their team better, and they came and took it to your Houston Astros in the first 2 games of the series.
Yeah, and I think what the thing that turned the tide was when you told me that Monday night was Paul Skeens versus bullpen day. I was like, we're fucking losing this game.
Except the bullpen pitched great.
Yeah, your first 6 innings. Yeah, first 6 innings. First 7 innings, you got them down 2-1. Yeah, you
had the game. You had the game coming into the season. You felt pretty good about 1-run leads going into the 8th inning, right? Like coming into the season, knowing you had Presley, then Hader, you were like, fuck yeah, let's go close down a ball game. Well, that's what you had. And a duo that had been pitching pretty well, both kind of sucked.
Yeah, that's what killed me. Because, if you take those things individually, when you're Ryan Presley and you have 15 consecutive scoreless outings and you give up a run, it's like, you know what? He's not Mariano Rivera. He's gonna get scored on, at some point, right? I get that, but when they both suck on the same night, that's when you're like, and it was just that game where you're like, because you knew the next night was going to be rough because you knew your bullpen was pretty much gassed, from having a bullpen game. So you're like, hey man, if we could escape with a victory against Skeens. And I don't know, did you see that Bregman foul ball that was like maybe 2 inches from being a dinger?
I did, yeah.
That's the one. I mean, that just, because that would have changed the whole complexion of the game.
Yeah, I mean, Monday's game is a frustrating game because, number one, once again, the Astros left a small village on base, right? Like the Astros had opportunities to add on to that two-run output, but they didn't. So I think the same could be said for last night. Again, I mean, this team just continues to leave runners on base. Monday night's loss is frustrating for a completely different reason, right? I think you've named everything. You burned a whole bullpen. You were in great position to win the game. You left runners on base in key situations. Tough, frustrating, gut-wrenching loss, right? That's baseball. Then to come back Tuesday, you've got Hunter Brown on the mound, who's been lights out lately. And quite frankly, the defense early in the game let Hunter down to the point where the tide of the game kind of turned a little bit.
Well, he was part of that. He had an error in there.
I mean, yes, but I mean, again, it's his defense, right? In general, the defense was a letdown, right? So it's stuff like that where it's frustrating to lose a game, right? Where fundamental stuff is the reason you lost that second game of the series. Bad defense in general. Bad. Yeah. I mean, there was even a play where there was an error on a throw to first base, and then Singleton doesn't look to go home, right? Like if Singleton throws the ball home, he gets an out at home.
And you wasted an absolute brilliant offensive effort by Yainer Diaz.
Yeah, 4 for 4 with a dinger.
Absolutely. I mean, and so here's the thing that and we were going to get to the other things. I think what disappoints me most about the action, and this is I think a part of the deadline that you really can't quantify, is how your team feels coming out of it. I can't help but think that the guys in the clubhouse are kind of feeling, yeah. Because particularly when you look at what the Mariners did. The Mariners get themselves 2 relief pitchers. Well, they trade out Ryan Stanek, so I guess net 1. But the 2 relievers they got are both better than Stanek, who they sent out. And they end up getting Justin Turner, who's not a great hitter, not even a good hitter.
Not anymore, but he's a good leader in the clubhouse.
But right? He's an average hitter, and they didn't have average hitters. And then, they got Arizarena, who is an absolute monster, particularly against the Astros, but, particularly in September and October.
Really a sleeping giant too, right? A guy who's having a down year. But has shown what he's capable of. He's been unbelievable in the playoffs. Who knows if the Arena trade works out for them? Who knows if Justin Turner works out? Who knows if the two relievers work out? But I think you're absolutely right about the clubhouse vibe or how the team feels after the deadline. We've talked before about the 2017 Astros. There was definitely a lull in this city after the Astros missed out kind of at the July deadline, right? Because back then there were two
Yeah,
deadlines.
it was Zach Brennan.
Keuchel comes out and says, the team really wishes we went and did something. Well, then you go get Verlander, and there was a boost in the clubhouse, right? September and October were absolutely ridiculous with this guy. So not only do you feel like maybe you could have got more, and you see other teams getting everybody, then you trade away two young guys who a lot of people thought were future pieces of this team. And you trade away a guy. I don't think Wagner is someone that the Astros feel like, oh, I can't believe we lost Will Wagner. But I do think, Loperfido is a good young guy. I think Bloss is somebody that was, in the clubhouse around people. And then you get back, a guy who is okay. I don't want to, like, you and I can get into some of the specifics on why the Astros went after Kikuchi is how you say it, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Why they went after Kikuchi. But at the end of the day, you and I both feel like it was an overpay, right? Like, I don't mind if that was the guy, because we've had this conversation back and forth. You've mentioned this name a bunch. Obviously, there's been some conversation about this player. The Astros and Jays have been linked, most of it because James Click used to be the GM here and knows our farm system and knows exactly who he's going to want. So I think your first mistake, number one, was dealing with the Blue Jays, Scott. I think you backed yourself into a corner where you had to go to the guy who literally could take advantage of you in a way that no one else could.
Well, and here's the thing that kills me. I understand that we have no idea what Pedro Leon is at the big league level. Literally, we have no idea. But taking him out of it, one of the main thing I've been talking about getting is I've been talking about getting more hitting. Because
Yes,
I think when you look at the first two games of this series, I think those are, exhibits A and B. This team scores runs in bunches. But there are about 3 or 4 games out of the week where you're just like, this offense just isn't quite on our outfield right now. You trade away your best of the 3. Again, we don't know what Pedro Leon is, but Loperfido is better than Cabbage. He's better than Chaz right now, but you traded away the best of the guys.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I don't think Loperfido is going to be Kyle Tucker. I don't think Loperfido is going to be a star, right? But right now, with everybody out and Kyle Tucker out, Loperfido was your best option to play a corner outfield spot every day, right? Like OPS wise, all that stuff. Now, Loperfido is hitting 236. He's striking out at more than a 36% strikeout rate. And he's got 2 home runs in his time in the majors with the Astros. He's literally putting up like Joey Gallo strikeout numbers without the pop. Is he athletic? Yeah. Can he play defense and play a few multiple positions for you? Yeah, absolutely. But he's not showing the pop that you would have liked to see from a guy striking out at that rate. And again, 237, not walking a whole lot. I don't think we lost an amazing player. But I think that package, right? Because I think Bloss is a guy who could eventually be a 3rd, 4th starter on a major league roster. I think that package should have got us more. Or I feel like this was a series of moves where there was another move coming that just never got made, right? Like, I feel like there should have been a bat somewhere down the line that either the last minute it just didn't happen, or you mentioned Yandy Diaz, the Astros were in on him until he decided to stay put. But all in all, it feels like this package that you sent out, which I'm fine if that's the package. I just feel like it should have returned more. If you could have got me another bat in with this deal for Kikuchi, maybe we're a little more happy. Maybe if Springer was in there, or if you had somebody that made you feel a little bit better offensively. I don't know. I don't mind giving up any of those guys. I don't think that they're the future of the Houston Astros. I just worry that you overpaid and you could have got more.
Yeah, and I when I'm looking at the other deal in a vacuum, this is the kind of trade I love. It's low risk, low cost. It's a guy with really good stuff in Caleb Ferguson, a lefty reliever, which Astros never seem to have enough of those. And he's a guy that you can envision working with our pitching coaches and figuring some things out.
Absolutely, because prior to this year, he was one of the top lefty guys in baseball. This is his first real bad season.
Yeah, but when I'm looking at this Astros team, the bullpen was not like a major concern of mine. Could you add a guy? Sure. Everybody can add more. But this team was a pretty damn good team, about 4 or 5 relievers deep. Obviously, we'll get to some other things that happened after that trade that, that we're a little bit happier about. But you were spending time on that when you had glaring holes in your offense. If you think John Singleton is good enough to hold down the first base position, okay. I'm not sure that I agree, but if Mauricio Dubon is your best option to play against lefties, I don't know. I mean, don't know what to tell you there, but you have gaping holes in at very least left field, if not left and right field, with Kyle Tucker, it's going to take him 3 months to recover from a bone bruise.
Yeah, you and I have talked about how the Astros report injuries before. That's a whole nother story. But I don't mind that the Astros made this move. I think you're right on the time that maybe could have been spent elsewhere. But at the end of the day, it's just so strange to me that they did not address the offense at all. I understand. I understand sticking with Singleton because I truly don't believe that we could afford a better option. I don't. We don't have the prospects to go get a guy like Alonso and a starting pitcher, right? And I think the starting pitcher was more important. But I do think that I threw the name Kevin Pillar out there. Guys hitting 270 with the Angels, 8 or 9 homers, some of the best OPS of his career, 10-year major league veteran, can play either outfield spot. Boom, there, you're automatically better, and it probably doesn't cost you very much. There are endless guys on the White Sox, on the A's, Tommy
Pham.
Yes, Tommy Pham got moved to the Cardinals. There are guys out there who have 1-year deals, who sign them with shitty teams, knowing that they will be moved at the All-Star break. It happens every year. The fact that the Astros weren't really in on any of those guys is frustrating. You mentioned Michael Conforto out of the Giants. The Giants suck this year. No offense to any Giants fan, including the one that I'm married to, but even if you think that you've got something in the tank, there's 3 teams ahead of you in the NL West. Where are you going to go? They didn't sell hardly at all. But I don't understand how we couldn't have pried an outfielder loose from them. They've got 2 or 3 good outfielders there. They've got the pieces that we brought back just don't make sense to me, Scott.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm actually, and I read a Fangraphs piece today where Kikuchi, I think, was an absolute target based on all the available information. Whoever was the pitching coaches, decision scientist, whoever it was, they decided Kikuchi is our guy. We are going to go get him. They probably saw something in his stuff. I think somebody has rated his fastball like second or third best fastball amongst starting pitchers in baseball. He's got 2 or 3 other secondary offerings, all of them solid. With him, what I've heard is that he doesn't have a ton of movement, and so he's got to locate. I mean, the stuff is good, but if he's not locating, if like he's going middle, he's giving up a dinger a game, and that's been his problem of late. But I think this was a case where, and we'll get into this when we get into later segments of the show, but this is where I think we got into a battle where we had the so-called computer geeks who were coming in saying, this is the guy you need to have. Because I think the package you sent out, would you have given that up for Scott Flaherty or Jack Flaherty?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you could have gotten Eflin for that. You could have gotten, a lot of different guys for that who might on paper be better pitchers. But I think somebody sees something.
I think you're absolutely right. Someone sees, at some point we'll get more information on who the guy who sees something is. But Kikuchi's 12th among starters and strikeouts, right? He's got a 40% ground ball rate. Those are some interesting things. But the batting average on balls in play is like 340, which a lot of people have blamed on maybe not great infield defense from the Toronto Blue Jays. So there is the assumption that some better infield defense from the Astros, who are pretty damn good second, short, third, right? Should help him as well with that high ground ball rate. So I think those things specifically could be some of the reasons that he was targeted, but the home run rate is high. He struggles most against pull hitting right-handers. And you know what? We got a pretty fucking short porch in left field. And the home run rate is higher than you would like was designed as a hitter's ballpark, but sometimes plays as a pitcher's park. But I mean, either way, this team for the most part has earned our trust. I think Dana Brown has done things to earn trust with us, right? He DFA'd Abreu, he DFA'd Montero.
You're breaking some news here, Tim.
Well, I'm sure we can talk about that at different points, but
I'm just saying, we haven't introduced that news to our listeners who may not know.
Well, that is true. Montero's been DFA'd, but if you're just now learning as this podcast comes out on a Thursday, you're not plugged in very well. But however, Dana Brown has been willing to go into Jim Crane's office and say, hey, look, you guys fucked up, and Jose Abreu's got to go. I said it on the podcast last week, just DFA Montero. No one's going to take him in a trade. And if they do, you're covering his salary anyway. So who the fuck cares? Just DFA him. And I think you saw that they probably tried to include Montero in some of these deals, couldn't get it done. So they just DFA'd him.
Now, the rumor is behind the scenes is that they approached him about taking a minor league assignment. Montero is actually receptive to that, but he wants his money. He doesn't want to just go down kind of like Abreu went down. So basically, we're going to wait until he clears waivers. And if he clears waivers, there's a very good chance that he'll just sign a minor league deal with the Astros.
And hey, that's awesome. Good for you. I don't even think that that's going to help, Scott. I really don't. You and I have been around this game long enough to know that sometimes a reliever just gets hot, right? Just because you've made it to the major leagues, you're already one of the best in the world. So there's no reason to believe that you can't go on a stretch as one of the best pitchers in the world and get really good for a period of time. It is the greats that sustain that success for year upon year. Well, at the end of the day, Montero went on a heater, got fucking paid, and now we're paying the consequences.
Okay, let me throw out some names for you. See how many of you recognize. The first one I know you will. Chris Davinsky.
Absolutely.
Just DFA'd, actually. So he's available if you don't want to pick him up.
I don't.
Great in 2017. Absolutely. And I think 2016 as well is when he first came up. But for that 2-year stretch. Okay. Charlie Kerfeld.
Okay.
How you
Yeah,
recognize the name?
absolutely.
Was wonderful in 1986. Absolutely brilliant. All right. Bill Dolly,
Nah,
1984. He was like a golden boy with the Astros. Frank DiPino.
no.
He was a great lefty in the early 80s. This one, I think a name you probably heard, Joe Sambito.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was good for about 1979, 1980. Relief pitching is that way. You and I both sat here, and if anybody wants to get the receipts for the last show, for the snap hook, you can go ahead and look. Both Tim and I were happy when they signed Jose Abreu because we thought, hey, we'll probably get a couple of good years out of this guy before he falls over the hill. Even before the ink dried on the Montero contract, we were like, what in the fuck are these guys doing? One good year. You just don't
Not
do
even
that.
a full good year, a good playoffs.
Well, he was good the year. It was a great season. But could you imagine going out this offseason and giving Taylor Scott 3 years, $36 million?
No, I couldn't.
But he's having a better year than Montero did in 2022.
It's again, that's why the whole click thing is so frustrating, right? And why the Astros slow playing the GM thing is so frustrating. And every decision they made after the 2022 World Series was wrong, right? They brought Dusty back for one more year. Wrong decision. They let James Click go. Wrong decision. They didn't hire a GM immediately. Wrong decision. They decided to go with a 3-year deal for Abreu instead of maybe like another 1-year deal for Yuli. Wrong decision. They decided to get Michael Brantley to come back for one more year. Wrong decision. They decided to sign Montero to a 3-year deal. Wrong decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And that one was the worst one of all because that's the one where you're sitting there like, yeah, come on. I mean, come on. We knew that. We knew what was going to happen.
Because I think at the time we both have admitted we were wrong in Abreu. And I think we both, if I remember correctly, we were both positive on the Michael Brantley deal. I think we both thought like,
I'll say hopeful.
yeah, I think we both thought like, okay, I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Guy was great for you until the injury. He will be great again. He's a professional hitter. I think most people saw that.
Yeah.
But I think
absolutely.
anybody would have been against Montero at 39. If you could have even told me like 20, I'd be like, okay, but I get it. But 3 years, it never made sense. So, I do commend Dana for having to have those tough conversations with your boss, right? Like, hey, you took some bad advice. You're going to have to write some checks for a little bit to get out from under this.
All right, Tim, before we get to the salty portion of our proceedings, I thought we'd play a little bit of game of, pick your winners and losers from the deadline. And so while you're working on graphics, because I'm sure you're kind of doing that behind the
I've
scenes,
got it up there.
I can just tell you what I look for. I'm not looking at individual trades. I'm not looking at like how much did you give up to get, because they're prospects we don't know. When I look at the deadline, what I'm looking at, what is your objective? If you're a playoff contender, what do you absolutely need to improve on? And did you get it? And if you are a probable seller, did you sell? And that's how I judge winners and losers. But I'll let you lead this off. Like if you're picking out one organization, you thought like, man, this organization kicks some serious ass. Who do you think that was?
I hate to say it. I think the New York Yankees did a nice job. I think Jazz Chisholm is kind of exactly the kind of player that they need. He's a pull-hitting lefty who can play second base. He can play shortstop. He can play center field. He can play left. He can play right. Verdugo has not been great. You've had a ton of injuries around the infield. he was perfect fit. I think he's going to be a very good ball player for them. I think maybe they could a little bit more starting pitching wise, but I think getting him was a great move for the Yankees. I think losers, White Sox. You had what everybody thought was the top guy, the top pitching candidate. You didn't trade him. You had an outfielder who a lot of people probably called about, and Robert. You didn't trade him. And if you're tanking, then fucking tank. Like, I feel like Crochet really screwed himself partly because he had that rule that if you're going to trade for me and I'm going to pitch in the postseason, you need to give me an extension now. But I don't know. I feel like the White Sox are still just going to shut that guy down. He's going to get very little arbitration. What he thought he was going to just the whole situation sucks.
Well, I'm going to go in a different direction because I actually liked what the White Sox did because the White Sox traded a lot. And, they didn't trade Fetty. That's true. I mean, not Fetty. They didn't trade Crochet, but they did trade Fetty. Robert is signed for another 3 years. So, I mean, he's not like a...
But they don't have anything. They don't have anything worth a fuck in the next 3 years. Like,
yeah, they did get to dump Eloy Jimenez, which getting rid of that contract for a guy that's not doing much. I'm not going to call them a winner, though. I think if you're looking at teams, I don't know if you saw the Miami Marlins added 15 prospects.
Hey, yeah.
In their various deals.
But isn't their number one salary like $5 million now? They have like a $13 million payroll.
Oh, yeah. It sucks. But they found a taker for Josh Bell for crying out loud.
True.
I didn't think anybody was going to pick that guy up, at least in a trade. But they caught the D-backs in a very precarious moment. I think the team, the adding team, Yankees, I think are a good call, particularly when you see how Jazz Chisholm has gotten started.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard
hot start.
Not hard to pick on that guy. But to me, I think I kind of like what the Dodgers did.
Yeah.
Because the Dodgers their problem is that they're really top heavy. They've got like 4 or 5 really, really good players in their lineup, and then everything just kind of goes to shit after that. And the same thing is true of their pitching staff. And so they went out and added I want to say it was like 6 or 7 solid major league players between position players and pitchers. And so, when you look at what a team needed, that's kind of what they needed. They just needed depth.
Yeah, they picked up Flaherty. They picked up Flaherty, which hurt the Astros for sure. And then the one that it didn't really come from the trade deadline, but came, he was DFA, Kevin Biggio, a guy who, is he Craig in a Hall of Fame player? No. But no. Kevin can play every infield position. Kevin can play left field. He can play 7 positions on the diamond for you. So at the end of the day, he's a 225-ish hitter. He's got some pop. He can play all over the diamond. Those guys are valuable. Those guys have some value.
Well, and the sellers that I like the most actually both came from the same division. I thought the Rays did an absolute great job. Basically, if it wasn't bolted down, they were selling it. And if it was bolted down, they were getting a crowbar and they were prying that sucker up and they were dealing it. The only player that they did not deal that they could have was Yandy Diaz. Every other marketable player, it's gone. And you can't really say they're still hovering around 500. I don't know how they do it. But I think the Blue Jays, because to me, the Blue Jays, everybody was like, oh, are they going to trade Vlad Guerrero? Are they going to trade Bichette? They kept those guys, which gives them an opportunity to re-sign them if they want to make another run at it. But all the other fringe guys, they traded. Danny Jansen goes to the Red Sox. They end up trading your favorite guy, IFK, to the Pittsburgh Pirates. They ended up trading Kevin Kiermaier. I can't believe anybody who picked that guy up. He's hitting like 180.
The same
But
kind of that's the same kind of move you made when you go get a Jake Marisnik, right? If you're up 1 run in the 9th inning, you bring Kevin Kiermaier into play center field. Like,
yeah, they traded out a couple of relievers. They traded, the Kikuchi trade might have been the biggest fleecing of the trade deadline. So, I really like what they did. Now, to me, the biggest loser, and you talk about a team that's going nowhere, the Colorado Rockies just fucking confuse me. And here's what I heard. I mentioned cupcakes. I mentioned cupcakes for a reason, Tim. On the eve before the trade deadline, what are most GMs doing the night before a trade deadline?
baking. No, I'm kidding. They're hitting the phones.
The Colorado Rockies had themselves a cupcake party.
I love cupcakes.
Well, and we talked about, Rafael Montero, going DFA. You're kind of hoping, somebody like, maybe we can get the Rockies, GM drunk. And I said, no. Just have them eat some more cupcakes. That blood sugar gets pretty high. I can tell you, Tim, from experience, you can get pretty delusional during those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. A sugar rush can be just as dangerous as a couple shots of tequila. But cupcake party is interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, though, is there really that much talent on the Rockies that people are going to try and get? That's also part of it. Like, could they try and trade Chris Bryant? Maybe, but like that guy's fucking washed.
But Ryan McCann, you could trade to somebody. I mean, the Yankees needed third base help.
Yeah.
You could have traded. You mentioned Bryant. They have some pitchers you could have dealt. But to me, the whole thing is that, and this team said they're not selling because they don't see themselves as sellers. Like, what the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah, you're in last place in the division. You got no chance of catching anyone, and you don't really have top prospects. What you do have going for you is a beautiful area, fans that can buy some legal gummies and sit in your stadium and get high as shit and watch some baseball. So maybe they don't even give a fuck that they're not that good.
Yeah, to me, I would have traded Chris Bryant to anybody for anything, just to get the contract off the books.
But that's probably part of it. No one's going to want to pay that contract for what he is. You're going to have to cover a huge chunk of it.
Yeah, that's true. But, to me, yeah. And they don't, and I don't know if you saw the report of one of the pitchers that went to the Brewers from the Rockies. Did you see that?
I did not, no.
No, he said, like, as it turns out, I was tipping my pitches for 2 months.
Yes, I did see that, yeah. For
like,
2 months he was tipping.
And nobody told him. It was a guy from another team. I just don't, what are they doing? Because, I get it over a course of a game. Like, we know Lance McCullers in the World Series against the Phillies was tipping. You could see the Phillies talking to each other and pointing and letting everybody know what was going on. But that was one game.
Yeah, that really brings your scouting department and your like analytics and stats department into question. Like, they're supposed to be going through watching tape and like, how are they not noticing that? Like, hey, every time you throw a fastball, you go like this, or whatever the tip was, right? Like, I'm really questioning your front office at that point for not catching that. But before we move on to some of the saltier portions of the show, Scott, your Houston Texans open up their season tomorrow night at the Hall of Fame game. And if I remember correctly, because I don't ever remember playing in the Hall of Fame game before, this is our first appearance in Canton, is it not? Or maybe one previous one?
It's the second one. David Carr actually played in his inaugural season.
First ever. Okay, yeah. So season we were at the Hall of Fame game, and then now here we are. I don't know, a number of years, 7th grade.
22 years later.
Yeah. With Andre Johnson going in this year. Do you want to put any predictions out for tomorrow? The one thing I'll predict is I don't think we see CJ Stroud.
No. And they've already, the Bears have announced that Caleb Williams is not playing. So we're going to see a heavy dose of Davis Mills. Hey! And hopefully some Case Keenum, but a heavy dose of Davis Mills. I'm actually interested. I don't know about you. I'm more interested in some of the position battles that we're kind of going on. Like backup running back, I think is interesting. I think some of the offensive line, seeing what's Kenyon Green's going to do at guard, seeing some of what's going to happen at that other cornerback slot, but seeing those and defensive tackle, seeing those open competitions, I think are the more interesting things to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all excited for this new high flying Texans offense that we've been promised. But the odds of seeing Tank Dell, Nico Collins, or Stephon Diggs tomorrow are pretty low. We're not going to see Mixon most likely. So, yeah, the running back battle I think is going to be good. I'm intrigued to see that whole right side of the offensive line if we see those starters play at all. I'm even intrigued. I want to see what does Davis Mills look like in year two of the Bobby Slowick system, right? Does this guy look like a serviceable NFL backup, or is he the guy who last year in a game where your backup had to win one for you got benched in favor of Case Keenum against the Titans? So I'm intrigued too to see what Davis Mills looks like.
Yeah, and I think some of the receivers. This is a huge camp for John Mechie. I mean, this is year three. He's now two full years away from ACL surgery. He's now a full calendar year away from the cancer. He's got to show us something.
Absolutely. And the Texans didn't do a lot at wide receiver over the offseason, minus Diggs, right? The high end guy, but they didn't really pick up anybody in the draft. They signed the twins from South Dakota State as undrafted free agents, but they left the door open for Mechie to come in and prove himself this year. So between him or Hutchins, I think they expect one of those two guys to really step up.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting watching both of those guys. Somebody's got to step up.
All right, Scott, it's time to start handing out some awards. This one, the Horse's Ass of the Week award. I'll let you take this one away.
I think this is a joint effort this week, Tim. And I think both you and I are going to go with your hometown Houston Astros. Now, I think we mentioned some things. We mentioned some possible intrigue. I'm kind of picturing a Game of Thrones-esque kind of battle between Dana Brown and Joe Espada and Jeff Bagwell, Reggie Jackson, and Jim Crane. And I think we're seeing signs, positive signs, that maybe the Dana Brown side is winning. I think the decision to DFA Montero is a perfect example of that. There was no reason to call up Caleb Ort, watch him pitch beautifully in 2 games, and then saying, thanks, bud, we got to send you back down for this jackass who's getting paid $12 million a year to suck. That's the kind of thing that demoralizes not only an Ort, but demoralizes a team. But here's my rule, new rule, Tim. Any injured player on the Astros does not exist. They don't exist. When they come back and they're healthy, they exist. Because we were told, Tucker, he'll be out a few games. We're not even going to put him on IR. He'll be fine. And then, I think it was last week or week before, we hope he gets back before September. Before September! That's 3 months! How's a bruise take 3 months? And then you have, JV kind of hurt his neck a little bit, maybe slept on it wrong. It's been a month. What, and then Luis Garcia is almost going to go on 2 full years, before he gets back from Tommy John. That's a little longer than normal. McCullers hasn't pitched in 2 calendar years. We're not even sure what's going on with him. I just don't, the injuries don't make sense to me. I was mentioning, you mentioned Mauricio Dubon going deep. Let me pull this up. So let's see. Where's Dubon? Coming into today, Mauricio Dubon, in his last 30 games, is hitting a robust 215, with a 237 on base percentage and a 333 slugging percentage. Those are his last 30 games. In his last 15 games, hitting 132, 175 on base percentage, 316 slugging. In his last 7 games, 133, 400. Why is he playing so often, Tim?
Because there's no better option, Scott. Because after a hot start, Jake Myers has been hot fucking garbage. Chas McCormick has been hot garbage. And you just traded Joey LaPerfido away.
Yeah, but Chaz is hitting even better than that.
Not by much. And you need both. And you need left and right field covered right now.
But here's the thing. It's like you're going to put Dubon with those numbers in against lefties at first base. I'd rather see Singleton.
And I think you have seen him. Dubon's not getting a lot of run at first base. It's been mostly Singleton.
It has, but he occasionally plays against lefties, and you're like, at least Singleton has the possibility of, stepping into one every now and then.
No, absolutely. But yeah, it's frustrating. I just feel like part of it is Espada has a few options to deal with, right? Like he's got these are his cards that he's been dealt, and he kind of has to play them. But also, I think you're totally right on the injury stuff, right? Like, I understand a deep bone bruise is a series of small microfractures. I get that. But what I'm asking, and I think what you're asking for, is just a little bit of transparency. Because I think what most people fail to take into account here is that Houston is one of the medical fucking capitals of the United States and America. If you want to fight cancer, you come to MD Anderson in Houston. Our medical center is one of the best in the entire world. And we can't get fucking proper diagnoses? We've got Dusty Baker laughing about HIPAA rules? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and the thing is that this is not Kyle Tucker lollygagging. It is not in Kyle Tucker's best interest to sit there and say, you know what, I'm not going to play. Because number one, he was having an absolute career year. And number two, this offseason would have been prime time for him to get an extension. And he could still sign an extension this offseason, but it's not going to be for nearly as much as it would have been had he been healthy all 6 months. It's not his fault he fouled a ball off his leg. It's not his fault at all. It's not his fault that, Justin Verlander, hurt himself. He's 41 years old. Hell, I know as much as anybody how hard it is to recover whenever you have minor aches and bruises. What we're asking for is a little bit of honesty. Be upfront, saying, you know what, it's going to be a little bit longer. For McCullers, maybe if you just sat there and say, we don't know. We don't know why. But, right now, if you consider, and this is the thing with this organization, I don't think we've ever been in this position before. But like I said, my rule, you don't exist until you play. If Lance McCullers does not exist, you literally have $50 million sitting on your payroll next season for guys that are not playing for your team. That's more than 20% of your payroll. That's unsustainable.
No, it's not. And I wonder, Scott, if maybe the McCullers money can be gotten back through insurance simply because his specifically is injury related. That part, I don't know.
But not for collective bargaining.
True.
Not for the tax.
That's true.
I have no doubt that based on the success of like Fubo and Space City Sports, I have no doubt that Crane's swimming in cash. I don't think that's an issue. I think the issue is Dana Brown probably went into his office and said, listen, here's what happens if you cross the second tax threshold. You're going to get these penalties. You're going to get these picks stripped away from you. You're going to get this international bonus pool money stripped away from you. Is that what you want? And Jim Crane probably went like, you know what? Not so much.
And I understand that, right? I think anybody understands that. But at the end of the day, yes, this is a business, but also it's sports, right? Like you're going to make more money when you win a World Series and you sell those playoff tickets and you can raise season ticket prices because you've won your third World. Like, right? There's checks and balances. There's a reason the Dodgers don't give a fuck when they blow past it because they make more money in doing so. They sold more Ohtani jerseys than they're going to pay in penalty.
Yeah, and I think what killed this team, I think, is what I lovingly call magical thinking. So go back to 2021. You have Framber Valdez, who you think is going to be good, but you're not sure. And then who else do you have in that rotation? You got Christian Javier, you've got Jose Urquidy, you've got Luis Garcia, and you're like, who the hell are these guys? Oh my God, we got to go get a veteran. So they went out and they got Jake Odorizzi, who I would argue was actually a league average pitcher when he was here.
He was fine.
He was a league average pitcher. But you freaked out because, oh my goodness.
And it was because Framber got hurt, too. Framber got hurt in spring training,
right.
And we thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was.
Yeah, but those 3 guys or 4 guys all hit. They all made it.
Yeah.
They all pitched well. That never, ever, ever happens. And so this team coming into the season this year, we're thinking, JP France, he'll be fine. He'll come back. He'll be just like the guy he was last year. Christian Javier, he'll bounce back, and he'll be fine. Luis Garcia, he'll be back in June. Lance McCullers, he'll be back in June. Verlander, he'll be just like his old self. He'll be, Cy Young guy, just like he's always been. Magical thinking. And so this team never considered, oh shit, we've got depth issues. Because they were assuming, okay, we call up Spencer Arrighetti. He's going to come in. He's going to be nails, Dan. He's going to come in. He's going to be Rookie of the Year. That doesn't happen normally. That's not normal.
Yeah, I mean, look at Hunter Brown's progression. Hunter Brown was okay his first year, bad last year, and it's been, I'd say, just good this year.
On balance, yeah.
He's had his moments of awesome, and he's had moments of suck, which balances out to good.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think if you would have told me Hunter Brown's going to give you a 4 ERA, I'd been like, okay, yeah, I'll go along with that. Especially if you tell me Ronel Blanco is going to give you a 3 ERA, I'd be like, oh shit, okay. But see,
that's what's frustrating too, Scott, is you've still had some of that found luck this year.
You cannot.
Ronel Blanco was not someone you could have predicted doing this, and even with that luck, they still shot themselves in the foot.
You cannot bank on serendipity. You just can't, because that's by its very definition. It's, I remember Jerry Hunsicker one time when he picked up a knuckleballer, Terry Clark, and he said, "We're looking for lightning in a bottle." And I was like joking around with other people. It's like, where does that rank with a shot in the dark? Lightning in a bottle.
What's more rare, the shot in the dark or lightning in a bottle?
But you can't bank on that. There should have been at least one signing where you're like, okay, here's a guy that can give you 5 innings. No, it's not going to be brilliant, but it'll be something.
I'm going to throw one secondary horse's ass out there. And this it's definitely a horse's ass. It's not a scumbag. Kevin Eschenfelder sucks in the color position on the radio, man. He is so fucking bad. I love listening to Robert Ford. Love it. There's almost nothing better to me than getting some quality time in my pool in the evening with Sawyer. I put the radio on. I love Ford and Sparky. We can even call it Sport if you want, because it's Sparky and Ford. And you know how disappointing it is when Steve Sparks is off for the series and it's Ford and Eschenfelder? His voice just sucks.
Have you ever heard my nickname for him?
No, he's in the TV booth tonight.
I always called him Kevin the Cue Card Eschenfelder.
Oh, no, here's the problem. I guess Blum's got the weekend off, so Sparky is in the TV booth, and they moved Eschenfelder to the radio booth. So this one's on you, Blummer.
Yeah. Well, the Astros did pull out tonight's game, so thank goodness. At least they get one game out of the series. But is it time to move on to hat tips?
It is time to move on to hat tips, Scott. We get our handy dandy video source playing there for the tip of the cap. Do you want to go first this week, or should I take it away?
I can go first. You know what? I'm going to go a hat tip to Major League Baseball because there's a lot of things that we point out that Major League Baseball does wrong. But to me, Major League Baseball does the trade deadline better than any of the other professional sports. It's an event. It is definitely an event. It's a TV event. It's a radio event. It's something that we pay attention to. And sure, it's because we love baseball. But you hardly ever see any meaningful trades in the NFL.
Yeah,
at the trade deadline. You see a few in the NBA, but this is something that baseball does particularly well. And it's because they have the minor league systems, to pull back from. It's easier to make deals that way.
I completely agree with 95% of what you're saying. I will say I don't like the changes that have been made to the deadline. I didn't even realize the deadline had passed because I'm so used to it being July 31st that when you texted me, well, that's it. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? We got a whole nother day, bro. And so
I don't know why I don't know why it was this year. I think it was just a unique thing in the calendar this year. Actually, when they took away the waiver deadline, I would have actually pushed it back to August 15th.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Give some other teams, to figure out whether they're, buyers or sellers.
Especially with the extra wild cards, it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world to have 2 more weeks, like you said, to let this thing play out a little bit. And then also, I'll add into that with the changes. I love a midnight deadline. I'm up late. Even I love waking up the next morning to see what is filtered through. 3:00 in the afternoon just seems so arbitrary to do a trade deadline.
Yeah, and it was 5 this year, so they keep moving that. They keep moving that window.
It was 4 Eastern, 5 4 Central, 5 East. It's just weird, man. It didn't feel final to me. Midnight, the end of the day, it's final.
All right, Tim. So who do you got?
This week, I am tipping my cap to the women's U.S. rugby team. So I don't know if you have seen any of the highlights or anything or any of the information behind it. The United States, women or men, have not medaled in rugby since 1922 when they took gold in Paris. Well, down late in the game, to use the NFL analogy, basically at their own 15-yard line, one of the women straight up trucked this girl from Australia and then goes 85 fucking yards to tie the game. And then because it's rugby, you don't have a kicker. You kick your own extra point. This girl steps up and nails the kick as well to bring the first medal for United States Sevens rugby in 102 years. And then following the game, it was announced that they got a donation of $4 million a year for the next 4 years going into the LA Olympics in 2028 from Michelle Kong. And it's just phenomenal, right? I have 2 daughters. You're a girl dad as well. The more sports that my children have the option to go play, the better. The more that they're organized, the better. Would I be scared of my daughter playing rugby? Yeah, I'd be a little nervous. But would I love if she's having fun? Also, yeah. So as a girl dad, couldn't have been more excited to see that one play out. And just go watch the play. If you haven't seen the play, this girl just straight, or woman, I don't want to be incorrect, but either way, she straight trucks through the Australian player and then goes on a dead 85-yard sprint without getting caught. I can tell you for a fact, I would have got caught from behind after 25 yards. The turf monster would have come or something. I don't know in what world I would have finished that run off, but she did. It was unbelievable. Jason Kelsey came on as the unofficial like mascot or celebrity
Yeah,
fan of the
I
team.
saw the picture. Yeah.
So it's just all around fun, exciting story, and I'm tipping my cap to U.S. Women's Sevens rugby on their bronze medal.
Okay. Um, I think for our favorite segment of the week, we kind of agree on a scumbag, but I picked a different one just for variety's sake. So I'm going to let you lead off because I think we'll probably have a good conversation around this one.
Yeah, so again, this is a sports show, but every now and then Scott and I will get a little political. I sent you a text this week or today, Scott, of a video from our favorite faux news channel, Fox News, and one of their hosts, Jesse Waters, um, makes the comment that when a man votes for a woman, he actually transitions into a woman. And he said doctors are claiming this. This man is on national fucking television saying that if and when I go vote for Kamala Harris, I will begin the process of transitioning into a woman. Well, fucking slap a pair of tits on me and let's go, Scott, because this could be fun.
And I think what's funny is that the insult that is stuck with them, you call them deplorable, call them horrible, call them racist, that doesn't seem to bother them. Call them weird, and they lose their shit. They absolutely lose their shit. And this is just weird. There are no scientists saying this. There are no doctors saying this. I mean, this is, one step above, Donald Trump people are saying, bullshit. But yeah, I don't, I don't understand it. I know that our secondary scumbag, both you and I were just kind of laughing at how the opening ceremony of the Olympics caused a bit of a stir. I don't know if you had any comments on that before we move on to my scumbag.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, that's not fun. Well, number one, the organizers said that it was an homage to painting about Dionysus, a Greek god. And, some of the participants said the same thing as well. But regardless, conservative Christian world lost their shit because they were poking fun at the Last Supper, which is not a religious relic, by the way. It's a painting. It's a painting by Leonardo da Vinci.
Who, by the way, was gay, and every one of the male Jesus depictions that Leonardo da Vinci ever painted was of his gay male lover.
Yeah, yeah. So, but let's move beyond that. And we've talked about this, and we talked about some of the people who've reacted to some of my writing, over the last several weeks. And basically, I just say this, is that if it bothers you, don't look at it. Don't listen to it. Don't read it. Don't get hot and bothered over it. Because the whole thing is that what an atheist does in the name of saying religion sucks does not impact you if you're a Christian. The whole thing is that atheist or that drag queen or whoever you're going to talk about, they don't have anything to do with your salvation. It's only one being that has anything to do with your salvation. That's you and God.
Yep.
That's it. That's it. So, if something bothers you, if you're bothered by Budweiser going woke, don't buy Budweiser. That's fine. Just don't bother me about it. Just, just politely sit there and say, I'm just not going to do it. I know people on the left who say, I'm not going to Chick-fil-A or I'm not going to Hobby Lobby.
I don't go to Hobby Lobby.
It's like, okay, that's fine. But have you ever felt the need to announce it on the air here, Tim, that you're not going to Hobby Lobby?
No. I just don't go.
Exactly.
I'm completely with you, Scott. It's the feigned outrage. I made a post just fucking rile some people up because I knew it would. And I said, this fake outrage over the opening ceremonies is ridiculous. Like, I'm laughing at the people who are upset. And the people who I figured would get pissed off got pissed off. But so far, some of the things that I've heard about this are that this is a sign of the apocalypse, and the white horse that was riding in it means that this, the 4 horsemen are coming for us. I've heard that one. I've also heard that the French didn't make it patriotic enough for America. This was on the USA Network. It should have been patriotic. I've heard that. The thing that drives me crazy, Scott, is with all this outrage, all the attention from Christians diverted to it. In the last month, 12 pastors from North Texas churches have been found to have been sexually abusing members of their church. Are we talking about that? No. We're talking about the fucking Olympic opening ceremonies and how it possibly depicted a painting of something written down in the Bible. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the fact that there's an epidemic of sexual abuse breaking out across the country of church leaders. Something that even worse than what happened with the Catholic Church is happening right now. But because it's not the Catholic Church, we're not talking about it. We could vilify the Catholic Church as America has for centuries. But the non-denominationals, the evangelicals, the Baptists
who don't want to call themselves Baptists. That's what a non-denominational church is.
Those churches have a serious fucking problem right now. Serious problem with sexual abuse inside the church. 12 in the past month in North Texas alone. But you know what? We're not talking about that.
Well, and my scumbag is going to be along those same lines. And I'm assuming you've heard of this person. Have you heard of Candace Owens?
Sadly, yes. Wish I could live a life where I hadn't have, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Candace Owens, and this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation.
Most times Candace Owens speaks, it's uncomfortable for those listening.
But I and Tim, in case that you cannot tell by watching the video, we are 2 white guys.
What?
So talking about, anything that has to do with African American or Black, this is going to be kind of a thing. But Candace Owens, she now says that evolution is being pushed by Satanists. Have you heard this, Tim?
I haven't, no.
Did you know? So are you a believer in evolution?
Yeah, it's called science.
So you're apparently science is Satanistic. I didn't know if you knew that.
I did know that people believe that. I got to be honest with you, one of the most enlightening experiences of my life was my college, I think it was biology, I can't remember what class, but they took us to the Houston Zoo, and they literally showed us on different animals evidence of evolution right there. I literally walked around with a college professor as they took us to the zoo and pointed out different features on different animals that they're like, this is proof. And it's just one of the most eye-opening experiences of my life.
So I think if you trace back, the source to Candace Owens, I think what we're going to find, somebody or some group is definitely propping her up. Definitely propping her up.
It's called the Koch brothers and the Heritage Fund, or the Heritage Foundation.
And here's the thing. There are a lot of weird people in this world. There are a lot of people that have weird beliefs in this world. The ones who drive me nuts are the ones that know better and are swimming in it anyway. So we've talked about, in addition to Candace Owens, we talked about our Tucker Carlsons. We talked about, maybe Sean Hannity's, Laura Ingraham. You're talking about, you talked about Jesse Waters earlier. These are people that know full well what they're doing. The late, great Lou Dobbs. These are all people. Yeah, I threw the great in there because I knew it'd get you.
Rest in piss.
But these are all people that know full well. And the thing is that we're recruiting Candace Owens because she looks a certain way. And so she can say the things, the unpopular things that we know that.
Let me say this. Let me say what you're trying to dance around. They're paying a Black person to say racist things against Black people, Scott.
Yes.
That is absolutely what they're doing. And it's not just Candace Owens. There is someone who is on my wife's school board who is a Black man who ran on NRT. or what is CRT. He ran on his platform was stopping CRT in schools. As a black man, that was his, and he won because people literally were like, well, he wouldn't lie about this. He's a black guy. That's what they do. They find people who are willing to betray their own community for money. That is the Republican Party defined to a T. People who are willing to betray their own interest and their own people for money.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard like of Uncle Tom's Cabin and what an Uncle Tom refers to.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the category that Candace Owens is swimming in. And I hope that
I wouldn't even like that. That term is offensive, right? And like I would say, like she's not even in that category. Like she, to me, it's not even a racial thing. She is just a piece of shit, right? Like to me, she's in the category of Alex Jones. She's in the category of people of Hitler, of Stalin, of Mussolini, people who knowingly want to destroy humanity for their own gain. It is not a race thing. Like, yes, they are paying her because of her race to do this, but what she is doing goes beyond race and it goes to just humanity as a whole. And she is trying to destroy the fabric of humanity that we live in.
Yeah. Couldn't have said. I was trying to dance around it.
Now, sometimes with this stuff, Scott, you can't dance and you got to get straight to the point. And if people want to be mad at me for that, be mad at me. But like at the end of the day, you'll find no bigger, I guess, ally or someone who will fight for his people than myself or Scott. Like we, and when I say my people, I mean like the world, right? Like I am a citizen of Earth. I don't believe as much as borders as many people. Like anybody who knows me, I'm a pretty strong leftist. So I fight for what I believe is right. I volunteer for political campaigns that I believe are right. And you can't dance around some things, right? Like when someone's a fascist, I truly believe the best way to deal with fascists is punching them right in the face.
Yeah, can't argue with that. Although I don't know that I want to punch Candace Owens, not in the face. Maybe you punch him in the stomach because it doesn't leave a mark.
You ever watch Trailer Park Boys?
No, but I say we say that stuff at school all the time. Just punch them in the stomach. I don't know. They started bending over and they couldn't breathe. I don't know what happened.
There's a great scene in Trailer Park Boys where these cops beat the shit out of someone with phone books because they say like phone books don't leave a mark. And so that could be what we do. We just use phone books.
There you go.
But that's going to be all we have for you here this week. We appreciate everybody who made us a part of your week. It's been a fun one. Astros get the win tonight. Hopefully, they're still tied for first. So hopefully this sparks a little something, little momentum. Kikuchi comes in, shoves his first start. And hey, all the experts are wrong. It was a great trade and everybody's happy going forward.
All right. Absolutely. Sounds like a plan, Tim.
Real quick, before we sign off, Scott, I know you mentioned you've got a couple new articles up. Tell us all about it, where people can find them.
Right. So I'm up at Crawfish Boxes and Battleroid Blog. I wrote about both trades, mainly just kind of what are we getting in return? Not really so much looking at who we traded, but, what can we expect from these two pitchers? And then on Battleroid Blog, starting off with my 5 questions feature with the Chicago Bears beat writer. And that landed this afternoon. So go and take a look at that one as well.
Absolutely. Crawfish Boxes, Battle Red Blog. Look for the man, Scott Barzilla. We appreciate everybody who joined us this week. We'll be back next week. Same bat time, new bat time, same bat channel coming out Thursday mornings now, late Wednesday night. So be sure to check in. If you haven't pounded the subscribe button on YouTube, please do so. Follow the Facebook page. Join the movement for Born on the Bayou Sports. We'll see you next week.